welcome her.
So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Joana, and for today I will be presenting my project, which is exploratory research on the role of gratitude in the accounting profession in Macau. I'm under the supervision of Dr. Tony as well as Dr. Udani. And for today's agenda, I have to use this. So we'll go through the typical structure of a research study as listed here. So let's just start. So how does a company stay competitive in the market? I'm pretty sure there are many ways, but two of them is to enhance productivity and keep their best people. But in order for firms to do so, they have to duck some money out of their pockets and actually provide salary increase, bonuses, promotions, and even modification of job characteristics. But what if I tell you that these firms and managers can utilize a low-cost motivating tool just by saying two simple words? Thank you. Well, in studies in philosophy, theology, and even positive psychology, they have found that gratitude is positively correlated to satisfaction, optimism, happiness, and positive affect. Furthermore, it's very beneficial to the society because it encourages social actions between the receiver and the giver. So if we know these benefits, how about if we bring this practice in a field wherein human capital is of utmost importance? That is the business field. In fact, nowadays, companies are encouraged to develop their own culture of gratitude. In fact, Jeff Weiner, the CEO of Clinton, even said that gratitude is the highest ROI management tool and a proven driver of workplace productivity. But before we explore further, let me tell you first why we're exploring it with accountants in Macau. Well, firstly, because I'm an accounting student. And of course, secondly, it's because of the nature that comes with the profession that just doesn't happen here in Macau, but happens around the world. And that is the high turnover rate, particularly in the public accounting setting. So why is that so? Is it because of the workload, the time pressure, or the fact that you have to be a part of the engagement team? We're not particularly sure, but we would like to know whether or not a culture of gratitude can actually make a difference. So, our research objective is to explore the role of gratitude in the profession, particularly in enhancing job performance and interpersonal relationship, and of course to help establish it as a potential tool for enhancing work life and culture, and of course to know better our accountants in Macau. So let's start off with literature. What is gratitude? Everyone should know that it's a quality of being thankful. It results from two things. Firstly, an individual should recognize that he or she received a positive outcome. And secondly, that positive outcome must be from an external source. So what does literature say about gratitude in the workplace? In fact, gratitude can make a person more positive, handle stress much better, and of course improve social relationships. Which is why, according to literature, gratitude can make a working environment much more pleasant because these positive people can bring positivity into the workplace. So how about job performance? In fact, not a lot of studies relates gratitude with job performance. So basically, this project of mine is somewhat a maiden study that opens new avenues to explore. Nevertheless, let me tell you the rationale with the literature that I have studied. It's like this. You're giving me gratitude, you thank me, and I feel good. And how about I return the favor, sir, by performing better for your job? So this notion is supported by Adam's equity theory, wherein if a person believes there's an imbalance in the relationship, he would like to balance it out. But the key word here, as you can see, is distress. We know that the person doesn't feel distress at all, but rather feels positively when they receive gratitude. So let's look at it from another perspective, and that is in social worth. So the rationale of this is this. You're giving me gratitude, you're thanking me, and I feel good about it. Why do I feel good about it? Because you're recognizing my self-worth, because you're enhancing my self-esteem. And so, I would like to reward you, sir, by performing better. How about with interpersonal relationships? We know that gratitude can make a person much more positive, and that's why they're more willing to help and easier to approach, which are two characteristics that are important in effective teams. Furthermore, it triggers the norm of reciprocity. What is that? It means you did something for me, I'll do something for you. Not because I have to, but because I want to. And that starts a cycle of gratitude that induces positive emotions that of course will do wonders in a workplace. So now let's go off to my methodology. I took a qualitative approach, that is in-depth interviews conducted in English, and responses were grouped and categorized for further analysis through manual content analysis. And of course, consultations with my co-supervisor who knew better about the topic was essential. My research participants composed of 8 people steadily working in the accounting environment, and before I went on, I had to pre-test my interview questions with 2 other participants. So the research questions involved the experience and perception and expression of gratitude of the accountants in their workplace. It also involved the gratitude's effect on job performance and interpersonal relationships. So this is the demographic data of my research participants. As you can see, there are 2 males, and most are females, but 4 of them are in the private setting, which is hotel departments and such, and public accounting setting, which is the Big 4 as well as the local accounting firms. So now let's jump into our findings and discussion. Firstly, I'll present it in this way. I'll tell you the conceptual understanding of our accountants on gratitude, then the actual manifestation, i.e. the real situation. And thirdly, the reflection on gratitude's current status quo. That is, what do they think about what's happening right now? By conceptual understanding of gratitude, we asked what is the role of gratitude in an organizational context? And their first response was, it's feedback. The rationale behind this is, if I'm doing a good job, I'll get a thank you. Just like what interviewee A said, that it tells her that she's doing her job right. But interviewee B, who is a manager or who has an experience of having subordinates, she also agrees by saying that if they're doing a good job, I'll thank them. But if they're not doing such a satisfying job, then what I'll do is I'll criticize them instead. The secondly and perhaps most important one is the role of gratitude in terms of recognition. And that is recognition of one's self-worth, as what I have mentioned a while ago in the literature review. So what takes place is that this recognition, enhancement of self-worth, induces positive emotions. Just like what interviewee G said, that it makes you feel valuable. And interviewee C even went on to say that it's a kind of motivation, because you're feeling like you are being respected in the workplace because you are getting noticed. And interviewee D and interviewee E are both partners, so they are both employers. And they also recognize the benefit of gratitude in terms of inducing positive emotions. That's why they say that whenever they appreciate and thank their staff, they will feel good about themselves and make them even more willing to work for them and to work even better. So that alone is like proof of enhancement of job performance, because even the employers can see, right? The third role is the setting of working atmosphere. And that, if you remember again in the literature review, that I said gratitude can make people more positive. And positive people can result to a positive workplace. And by people, the burden here is on the boss. Just like what interviewee B and interviewee H has mentioned, that if you have a boss who appreciates you, who thinks you, is very grateful, then it makes the working environment better and it makes you happier. And that matters, especially in the public accounting, wherein the atmosphere is just so stressful because you need to follow and need to chase some deadlines. But what is the actual manifestation of gratitude? That is, what is the actual situation? Do they even experience gratitude? Do they expect gratitude? And is gratitude expressed in how it's expressed in the workplace? They all reported to be experiencing gratitude, but they admitted to not experiencing it as much as they wanted to. And they said that they have little to no expectation of gratitude in their workplace. So that challenges their conceptual understanding, because a while ago they were claiming that it's very important in the workplace. But now they're saying, actually you're not expecting it so much. We're not expecting it so much. So the reason is because they believe gratitude is a bonus. That is, if you receive this surplus, you'll feel happier and you'll work harder. But if you don't receive any surplus, then you still have to work because it's part of your job. So what causes this little to no expectation? In fact, their responses gave us 2 reasons. Firstly, it's the culture. They believe that Chinese are not so open with expressing their emotions, and so they don't expect as much. They even said that they're very reserved and conservative. One of the interviewees said that his boss was a typical Chinese lady, that even if his performance exceeded the expectation, she just told him that your work was quite okay, even though he knows it was really good. And expressing gratitude, according to them, is sort of a Western thing. Because as what interviewee G particularly pointed out, you can see that it's not practiced in daily lives here in Macau. Like for instance in the US. For those people who have been to the US, were you surprised when you started to have to give tips to the restaurants? That's because they want to, that practice suggests that you're satisfied with their job, you're thankful for their service, so you tip them in accordance to how you feel about them. But in Macau, if you go to restaurants such as those Tan Tan Tang, you don't really have to tip them unless it's really luxurious restaurants, right? So the second reason for causing little to no expectation is the nature of the job, and that is public versus private. We know that public is there's more workload, that there's more pressure and time deadlines, and that there's more interaction because you're required to be part of an engagement team. And so their expectations of gratitude from boss and colleagues differ. You can see here that according to the public setting, they don't expect so much from their boss because they're too busy to think about whether or not they're receiving the right amount of gratitude. They just want to meet the deadline. But in terms of their colleagues, they believe gratitude is inevitable because their tasks are interdependent. So I'll have to depend on you and you'll have to depend on me. So it's likely we'll be grateful with each other. But in terms of private, where tasks are more independent, there's less interaction between bosses as well as colleagues. That's why there's lesser expectations in terms of gratitude. So in terms of how they express gratitude in the accounting profession, you can see here, when I ask them, so how do you experience gratitude? They can say quite a lot. But when you ask them, so how do you express gratitude? In fact, you can see they can just mention two. And even this one is just exclusively for employers. But why is that so? They presented reasons from their responses. Firstly, towards their boss. They believe that their boss is a very busy person. So that's why they do not want to get in the way of whatever their boss is doing. So to compensate for the lack of expression, what they will do is, according to interviewee F, they work harder. They deliver better quality of work. With colleagues, they are in the same hierarchical level, so they're much more liberal in terms of expressing their gratitude. But to subordinates, that is from boss to subordinates, they are much more reserved because they're scared of misinterpretation. They don't want other subordinates to think that this can be a sign of favoritism. So whenever they show expression of gratitude other than verbal, they'd like to keep it within the confinement of the workplace. That means they will buy snacks and they will buy treats or high tea whenever there's busy season, but they are not as likely to invite them outside for lunch or dinner because they'd like to keep it professional. Well, that's according to interviewee D and interviewee E. So, for the third finding, we're going to talk about their reflection on gratitude's current status quo. So the question is gratitude inherent to their profession? And you can see that most of them answered no. And their reason for this is because of the culture and industry effect that I've been mentioning all throughout the presentation. But in terms of gratitude and job performance, they agree that it could definitely enhance work performance because they perceive gratitude as a bonus. It is something that the manager or the boss isn't really required to give out, and yet they do. And that's why they'd like to reward their boss with better performances. So this supports the notion of voluntary reciprocity stemming from receiving gratitude, wherein according to Smith, gratitude motivates people to reward each other. Furthermore, because they feel connected with their boss through gratitude, they consequently recognize that they're responsible towards them, that what they want should be what they want as well. So in fostering interpersonal relationship, they also agree that yes, it can enhance interpersonal relationship. And it's even much more apparent in accountants involved in engagement team in the public accounting industry because it goes with the nature of the job. And that's why it also supports the literature of Grant and Gino when they said an inevitable gratitude enables other people to recognize others' contribution and also thinking beyond just themselves. So, to conclude, they perceive that gratitude is a feedback. It's a recognition of one's worth and its set working atmosphere. However, they have little to no expectations in terms of gratitude because of the culture and industry difference. And the most common expression is usually verbal expression with praise, and they would prefer to have it more since they're not having it as much today. In terms of job performance, to conclude, yes, it can enhance job performance because of the perception that it is a bonus. So it is less of equity theory, that is feeling distressed like you owe them something, but more of positive emotion, that is reward to the giver, i.e. the boss. Furthermore, because they experience an enhancement of self-worth, you can say that it is a form of reinforcement because they would do it again in order to receive this enhancement of self-worth. And in terms of interpersonal relationship, the positive emotions and the positive atmosphere that gratitude can bring to a working environment can enhance interpersonal communication and cooperation as per the responses that I have analyzed. So although accountants believe that it's not an inherent part of their profession, their responses show that gratitude has actually benefits and is very important in the workplace, even though it's not as practiced today. So the potential of gratitude being a motivating tool is still there, and it's still open for exploration. And it would be nice if we could adopt something like this in our workplace. Of course, my study had several limitations, that is, the sample being too small and not fully representative. Of course, the language used was not their first language, and there are factors such as culture is not thoroughly explored. The role of gratitude also focused on the recipient of the gratitude. And of course, for implications of future studies, it would be best if we could work on this limitation, maybe comprise of a larger sample, and also carry out similar research in other industries in Macau so we could compare it all together. And maybe we could also conduct further and more in-depth investigation on other factors that can play a role in the expression in gratitude, such as culture, such as age, and such as gender. And for that, with all being said, I would like to start off and develop a habit of saying thank you, and I'm very grateful for your attention.
Now it's time for Q&A. Dr. Stefano welcomes any questions from the floor.
JC, can you just explain a bit, perhaps for the sake of the audience, how you did the coding, the processing of the data you collected from the 8 informants?
Okay.
Because especially qualitative study is not too popular among researchers.
Dr. Adani knows this because he worked with me, so I'll be explaining it for you guys. Basically, we transcribe the interviews into written form. And then we would, from previous literature, we would set up labels for certain words such as performance, such as relationships, and all that. And those are called coding. Then after that, these coded or these labels will be grouped into categories. And then we will compare, again, basing on previous literature. And then find themes that emerge, as what you guys have already seen in my findings and discussions. So that is the concise way of my methodology.
Thank you.